Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to USITT's Fridays. It's a new series we created to broadcast on Friday afternoons throughout the summer to reconnect with some of our exhibitors that were able to join us in the virtual 2021 conference. We would like to thank those exhibitors. And we're going to welcome, I'm going to add them to the screen now. Today we're welcoming creator of Empty Space Technology. We have Sam Anderson with us today and his colleague Jason McDaniel. Today's topic, welcome gentlemen. Today's topic is best practices in online inventory management using StageStock. I'm going to let Sam and Jason take over from here. They're going to know a lot more about their product than I will. Take it away, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine, and thank you for having us here on this inaugural season. I guess it's an inaugural series of videos. We're really excited to share with you a lot more about online inventory in general, and more specifically, a couple things about our product, which is StageStock. You can find more about us at theemptyspace.com. That's our website, and you can look into things about StageStock on stagestock.com. So if we can just put the presentation up on the screen, start rolling through a few things. First, we just want to take a minute and introduce ourselves. So my name is Sam Anderson. I live here in San Antonio, Texas. I want to go ahead and acknowledge that San Antonio is the present-day name of the land, the tribes that was taken from the tribes collectively referred to as the Coahuiltecans. I tried to pronounce that 5 different ways, and I hope I got that right. And that was, this land, of course, has been taken and ceded by many different countries and peoples throughout the years. I've worked in the entertainment industry and in the technology industry, and Empty Space has been a great opportunity for me to meld those two opportunities together to create software that's purpose-built for the theater. And Jason actually and I've been business partners for a long time, so I'll toss it over to Jason to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jason, he, him. I'm coming to you from Missoula, Montana, which is located on the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. I've been in the industry for a number of years now. I started in scenic design and technical direction, moved into automation, and now for the last decade, I've been production managing and running a stage management program and assisting with a props storage system. I came, like Sam said, we've been together for a while. I came to Empty Space with this idea actually of StageStock. We had kind of kicked it around in a Microsoft Access format for a while at one of the universities I was working. And I found that there were some challenges that posed. And so I'm going to give it back to Sam, and he's going to talk about some of those challenges on making decisions on your inventory.
Yeah, absolutely. So StageStock is a product that we've created. StageStock is both a web app and a mobile app. It'll run on any browser on any computer, but it also run on iOS and Android. The slide here says it's coming soon, but the app is available. So if you want to go to the App Store, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and download it, you're welcome to download there. And there's just a button right on the front that says log into the demo. And you'll be able to go in there and see a demo inventory of how that might look. We'll be talking about StageStock throughout the presentation, but we also just want to talk more broadly about using digital tools to do inventory. So in creating this app and creating StageStock, we spent a lot of time talking to customers and prospective customers, people like you out there who are trying to be successful creating and managing inventories. And we've learned a lot about what's driving them, what their sort of hopes and dreams are with inventory, what they've tried in the past, where they've struggled, where they've found pain points. And today we'd like to share some of those insights with you, which hopefully will help you avoid some of those pitfalls that they've fallen into as well. Again, we'll talk about StageStock along the way, but we believe like most of these learnings are universal and can apply to you in whatever tool or technology that you decide to implement your inventory management in. But the first thing we find is that sometimes people just dive in too quickly and start taking pictures and inventorying things. Really, the first thing you need to do is do a lot of thinking and planning before you ever inventory anything. And so let's talk about some of these principles or some of these key questions that you might ask yourself in your organization before you ever start taking any inventory, before you ever start. Like, how can you set up your inventory project for success? First, really ask yourself, why are we creating an inventory? What do we hope to get out of this once it's created? Do we just want to know what we have? Do we hope to rent things out and make money off of this? Do we just want to do better at managing, what we have internally and, using it between departments or between productions? Or do we just find ourselves buying over and over the same things again and realizing, oh no, we have 20 of the same thing that we keep buying and we don't realize that we have in stock? What problems are you trying to solve? What pain points do you have as an organization? Those are a couple of samples we hear, but I'm sure there are some very specific ones at your organization that's driving you to think about creating some kind of inventory system. Another question to ask yourself is, what will I do with this once it's created? Will I use it to check things out and check things in? Will I use it to track what is out? Is it something that our staff members will use every day as like a daily tool? Or is it something we'll keep more as a catalog and we'll use it once a month or every few months to look through our stock? So that's some other key questions or key areas to consider. And also, what technology support, or will the technology you have, or do you have technology right now that will support your goals and address your problems? So diving a little bit more on the technology side, you really want to explore your digital toolbox that's available to you. There's a very common sort of framing out there of like, do you build, buy, or partner, right? Do you use something that you have, maybe general purpose software that's already on your computer, right? You can always use Excel or numbers, right? You can use Google Sheets in the cloud. You can use paper and pencil, right? You can, but do you use something you have already on your desk? Do you go out there and buy something that's new, something that's purpose-built for the theater? So that would be like a product like StageStock. Or do you build something yourself? We have a lot of people who've thought about this in the past or who are actively doing this, where they're building a file maker or building an access database, or maybe even they're big enough to build their own app or create a custom system that does things exactly like their organization would like it to do. We see people do all three of these things, and there's not an invalid approach. And we won't tell you that one is necessarily like something you shouldn't do. Each one of these can be valid in different scenarios. But just to give you some more, one more level deep on how to sort of make that decision is, do I do something myself? Do I build it myself? Do I buy and partner with somebody who's created something? Think about, do you want to have a solution that's cloud-based or machine-based, right? There's a lot of inputs to this question. Do you have connectivity in the places you need for it to be a cloud solution? Are you going to be constantly battling with internet connectivity and keeping things in sync and being able to access your inventory if it's in the cloud? If you're keeping something on a machine, do we have a way to preserve it? Do we back up this data? If we keep this on site somewhere and this computer dies, what do we, how do we recover it? If you're going to use a cloud solution, think about, do we need to provide remote access to this? Or is on-site access enough? And that might lead you more toward cloud or more toward some kind of on-site or in the facility system. And then one kind of metaphysical question you need to start exploring is like, how controlled or how controlling do we want to be about our inventory? Do we want to have a very strict system, with very strict parameters around it, or are we kind of loosey-goosey the way we manage things around here, and we like it that way? And you have to think about the culture of your organization. You think about what you're driving towards to decide what makes the most sense there. One other thing that cloud enables for us nowadays is multiplayer solutions, right? So the idea that you can have many people logging in, many people helping to create an inventory solution, versus historically what we've had as many like single player solutions where it's on a machine or there's some kind of networked access you need, but it's really just sort of in one place. So in order to kind of consider this, think about, what does your inventory team look like? How many people will be contributing to this effort? Will you be doing multiple projects or multiple departments at the same time? Are you just trying to solve this for costumes? Or are you just trying to solve it for props? Or is it really, everything? You want to sort of have a solution that will work for lighting and for costumes and for props and for scenery. And then think about the different needs you might have in terms of the team structure if you are creating a catalog, like when you're in the cataloging phase where we're creating the inventory, we're putting it all in the system, we're sort of getting up to where we need to be, versus an operating phase when you're checking things and checking out, when you're just adding sort of new things as you create them or acquire them to the system. There may be different multiplayer needs there where maybe you'll have a lot of people who are building the catalog, but maybe you only have a few people who are actually operating the inventory. And again, that might lead you to a decision point of, should we go multiplayer? Should we lean heavily into the cloud? Or is a single player solution something we can live with or work with in our scenario? And then lastly, I would highlight here, how will you handle roles and permissions in your system? This is something I think that gets a lot of afterthought after you've created something or after you've invested some time into something. You think, okay, I have this system and I have an ability to share it. Let's say it's a Google Sheet. Well, how do you segment what you share with whom, and then how will you organize all of that into roles and permissions and letting people in and out of the system? Do you need segmentation of duties? Do you have sensitive items like things in your armory or chemicals or other things that you may not want people to know that you have, or know where they are, or know how to gain access to them, which is something you would probably want to keep in your inventory system. Is this for use inside your organization or outside? Do you have people who rent from you who you're going to want to provide access to? And does the digital tool that you're picking provide public access to the thing that you're cataloging? And then maybe a little bit more deeper in the software, which is like, how will you protect the system that you create from errors? And those errors could come from humans or they could come from software. So do you have a resilient, sort of supported not error-prone system where somebody could log in there and accidentally just wipe, a whole tab out of your spreadsheet or a whole category of items out of the system, which might be an unrecoverable action. So a lot of considerations really go into this decision making. And so I've asked a lot of questions here. I'm not necessarily providing a lot of solutions really to these. We do have a pretty strong perspective on the solution, which we've baked into StageStock for most of these questions. Lastly, I just want to highlight how will the digital solution you create for this inventory be supported, and how will people use it? Can others easily adopt and use the solution you're providing as a tool they're familiar with? Is the setup that you created something that they can use? And how will it be supported? Who will you talk to when you need support? And maybe even the most extreme question is, how will it survive you, right? So we all move around between jobs. There's a lot of just change in life, and you may win the lottery, right? Like, how will what you create today serve your organization 1 year, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road? And so thinking about that longevity of the investment you make, which is a huge investment, and particularly in terms of time and possibly in terms of money, how can that be sustainable moving forward? All right. So that being said, you've gone through all those questions. Maybe you've created, a questionnaire, or you're collecting information. You're discussing this with your colleagues at work, and you're almost ready, right? You're almost there. You've done a lot of planning. Great quote here by Abraham Lincoln about preparing. You spend the first 4 hours of chopping down your tree, sharpening the axe, so you only have to swing it for 2 hours. And so then I think once you get to this point and you pick a digital solution, and we hope you consider StageStock in that consideration that you make. We want you to take a 3-phase approach to planning your approach. The first attribute you think about is the scope of it. How wide is your aperture going to be when you start your inventory project? We have a very strong recommendation here. We recommend you start very small. Maybe not even start with your smallest department, like lighting or sound. Maybe start with one pile of stuff in your smallest department and test your solution out, right? Really exercise your solution. Will it be the thing that you want to use? Some people start with we're gonna catalog every single costume we have in our inventory, and costumes is typically one of the largest sets of inventory that people have, and it quickly sort of spirals out of control, right? And that time that you need for learning and ramping up on a solution sometimes is just crushed under the weight of the scope of the effort that you start with. So plan your approach wisely, small scope to begin with. The second planning for the approach you want to take is about the rhythm. Think about the rhythm of your organization. What will fit? Inventory has to be something you do as a part of what your organization is doing all the time. Like, you are there to produce theater. You are there to make great shows and build your audience. You're not there necessarily just to build an inventory. And so think about, in service of the organization, how could you build your inventory and sustain that approach over the rhythms and time available in your organization? Some people find inventorying as you build is a really sustainable approach, right? So we're building a new show, or we're bringing a show out of storage, and as we do that, like, let's just, we'll inventory that thing as we touch it or as we create it in the shop. We're just going to start from a point in time now and move forward. Some people have the extra capacity or the time, or particularly during the pandemic, when things have been shut down, but staff are there. We've seen several customers who was like, we're just going to go through our rooms and we're going to do special inventory projects. And we're going to take everything off the rack. We're going to build a process, and we're going to inventory the heck out of this stuff. And either approach is valid, but you really need to just look at your organization, look at the rhythms of your organization, and look what will be sustainable over time. And maybe it is, hey, during the summer, we're going to do some special projects, but during the production season, we're just going to kind of inventory as we build and sustain it.
Hey, and Sam, Zamora just posted a comment over about costumes tend to get altered and changed as as we go on a show, and that's another thing to really consider about your solution is, how are you going to be able to track that information? Is it going to be an easy way to record that? Is it something that you're going to want to record? And again, as Sam mentioned, StageStock, that was one of the key elements when we were thinking about this. We wanted to make sure it was really nimble, and you could make those changes and be able to utilize that information as it's needed.
Yeah, it's a great comment, really, and thanks for expanding on that, Jason. It's really important, like that. We found that an inventory system, if it only represents a point in time in the past, it will quickly become unvaluable for you as an organization. But if you can view, like, hey, we maintain this item, and then we put this item in a show, and there's this whole like evolutionary collaborative nature of what we do with our stuff. And StageStock really was built with this intent in mind, that stuff is made to be used, stuff is going to come out of storage, it's going to be altered, it's going to be maintained, it's got to go to shipped off every once in a while for repairs or maintenance. And we've built all that functionality inside of StageStock so that it really thinks about objects at rest, but also objects in motion, and how we track that through the whole life cycle of acquiring the item all the way through getting rid of the item. Cool. Okay, and then the last part, so we've talked about scope, start small, we've talked about rhythm, right? Create a rhythm that fits in your organization. And lastly, we want to talk about location. Location is a big deal, particularly in setting up a successful inventory effort. Jason will probably talk a little bit more about this in his segment when we get deeper into how he has worked with this. But generally, you need to really catalog from the beginning, what are all the places that we have that we store things? And how will we reference those places in our inventory system? And how specific are we going to be in terms of where we keep things, and how specific do we want to inventory them in that place? So for example, do you want to go all the way to the shelf level? Do you want to go all the way to the bin level on a shelf? We have a very flexible location system in StageStock that allows you to say sort of room, wing, row. It's totally extensible. You can put as many hierarchical elements in that as you want. Think about maybe a library, right? Giant university library organization. When you look something up, a book up, there's a whole system involved there in terms of how you find what section of the library it's in, what stack number, what row number, right? What shelf down that row. And that helps you find a book quickly. Obviously, most of us aren't thinking about inventorying as many things as might be inventoried in the library. And so think about it. You may get too specific, and it may become a burden to maintain all those locations. Or you may get too broad, and then it's impossible for people, when they look something up in your system, to actually find where it's supposed to go. Or you might be planning future capacity. You might run out of capacity in a location, and so you need to think about, where is my future storage going to be, and how am I moving things from place A to place B. But sketching all that out in advance, creating a spreadsheet, creating a Word document, just with that hierarchy of, okay, we want to catalog these buildings, we want to catalog these sections of those buildings, or these rows or shelves or bins or areas, closet numbers, right? Just having that sketched out from the beginning will give you a lot more sustainability, flexibility, and stability as you go through the inventory process. Great, and with that, you actually get to start inventorying things. So you've done all this planning, you picked a digital tool, you've planned your project in terms of how you want to scope it and approach it, and now you actually get to go inventory things. And this is what Jason's been doing for several years now, and so he's really learned a lot in his organizations in terms of, and from our customers that we talked to, in terms of how to do this successfully. So I'm going to toss it over to Jason to bring it home for us on actually creating inventory items in the system.
Okay, thank you, Sam. What we're going to do now is we're going to continue to talk sort of about the concept of it. We'll take time, and when you have questions, we can show you stuff inside of our inventory. But I really want to continue to talk about the process of now starting to get the things off the shelves, off of the costume racks, and into your inventory, and actually being able to use those. Sam had mentioned earlier working in piles. This is a concept that I like to think about, and this is when we approach things. Well, I'll start with, we approach it right now at my organization in twofold. One is that we go by an area and then we work through that area, and we've picked those as the items that are most often used. Glassware was one that we were always using, and so we were like, okay, well, we're not using half of what we own, if that, because we can't get to it, we can't figure it out, so let's do that first. And then the second fold is that we work as we bring stuff in on a show or as it's being built. And so when we bring it in, we photograph it, we build the items, we put it on the stage, then we tag it. But we're going to look right now just at the working in piles idea. And so we picked a section. We're going to work through those chunks at a time. We have found that the digital camera with a removable SD card is really, for us, the best way to approach documenting the images. We will do this by having 2 or 3 SD cards, and so we can shuffle through them as we move along. We take photos of everything using a scale reference, and then we've got a dry erase board that we use to create key information and create a slate, sort of like on a film, so that it's photo, 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 slate, photo of the slate, so I know that that's the close of that information and I move forward. And we find that that's been really helpful for us. And I'll show you an example in a minute of what one of those looks like. And then we work in those piles in groups of 20 or 40 based on just trying to move that through so that we're not getting a backlog. StageStock labels, we can print those straight from the system with the QR code and the information on it, and they're 20 at a sheet. So typically what we'll do is we'll do 20 items at a time and kind of step that through the process. Next. And so here are a few images. We're looking at trying to pick a pile. As I mentioned, glassware. In dishware. That was one of the things. This was the original organization of it in our shop. It was well organized and very neat. If you can look at some of the detail there, you can see that there are glasses stacked on top of glasses. There were some challenges with that organization and keeping that orderly. One of the things I really say, once you decide what that section is going to be, now you need to have what is the goal of how you're going to organize it, and how is it going to function? How do you think you're going to function? One of the things we were looking at was we wanted to take up less space than we were already taking up. And then the really big one is, since this stuff was not necessarily all super rigid, every now and then stuff would get knocked off and it would be a big mess that we'd have to clean up. So we wanted to make sure that we were protecting the items a little bit more. So as we move into the next, we'll move past these images. And sort of, we think of this in the, for our aspect as a station setup. It's, I've got the pile, I'm going to photograph it, I'm going to enter it, I'm going to print the label, I'm going to then put the label on the item. And if the item is on stage, we actually organize it and put it inside it. We've got little manila envelopes that seal up by show. And so we put the label there so that as soon as the strike happens, we'll actually be able to put them right on and then return it to stock. And here, let's talk a little bit more about the stations, Sam. We like to have an assistant to the photographer, somebody that's actually picking the stuff off the shelf and putting it into the light box or onto your area that you're working, the person taking the photo, and then the person doing the data entry. When we do things a lot of times in true boxes or buckets, we'll have 3 buckets labeled A, B, C, and the photographer is taking photos of everything in A with the SD card labeled A and putting them back into another bucket and moving the A label to that bucket and sliding it over and kind of moving that through. Then the data entry person takes that card and then they can print the labels and then put those labels onto the items and get them ready to do the return. Here's a page with some of those things in mind. So what we're doing here is this practical exercise. We're organizing the stuff on a table, preparing to take photos of it. And on the top right, you see we've got the photo box there with an item inside of it in the photo. This was in a process of moving everything out of one room that was about 15 by 15, chock full of shelves, moving it to another building. So we had to do this in a really quick method, and we had a team of about 6 people working on it and moving stuff to the other building as it was being packed up. So we would photograph it. We had a really rough dry erase slate you'll see to the right of that photo box in the top corner, and we just like jot down the information on it. We would take photos. I would take a photo of the slate and then put the item next to me so that they could actually start boxing it up. And you see on the bottom, on the bottom left, we've got a photo box. We purchased that from Amazon. The thing has been a lifesaver for it. It actually folds up to the size of probably your design portfolio, and it pops open and closes in a matter of seconds. So I highly recommend that. We've got some links for some of those products that we found that are really helpful. We're not endorsing them. They've been a good thing for us. And then in the bottom corner, you see one of our students actually boxing up the glassware, and it's going inside of the predetermined box that we knew what the location of that box was going to be, and we organized it in a specific way inside of that. The next slide. And we talked about the slate. This is sort of an example of that. As we're taking the photo of this stereo unit, we take, depending on how many images we think we need to tell the visual story, we'll put that in there. StageStock is designed so that there's no limit on the amount of images that you can put on an individual item. We at StageStock really feel that the organization needs to represent the item visually, because as we're designers, we work visually. That's the main thing for us. Is this idea came out of sitting in a design room, having a conversation in the rehearsal hall, and being able to look at stuff instead of walking down the aisle and picking it up and holding it. We wanted to really be able to show that information. So in the slate here, you see the stuff that we have standard on our prop items is what is it, the brand, what the location is, how many, and what's the quantity of this item, and then the dimensions of it. We really put that information in because originally we thought, oh, well, we'll type all of that stuff into the item description. And we did that for a little while. And then we realized that and this is one of those best practices for us, we found that we weren't searching for 15 inches. We were searching for a stereo system. And when we got to the stereo system, we were looking at it. And if we wanted to know how big it was, we learned that we could just take the photo of the slate card and attach that as one of the image items. So I could then say, oh, this will fit on that shelf that's only 14 inches deep. So that's this kind of an evolution of something, and I love this idea is because it wasn't something new. There may be some of you out there that remember back in the days when we used to take Polaroid photos and stick them in a book, and this little placard was one of the things that was in that as well. So we've kind of just modernized what was already working really well. And so here's an example of an item that's being built. The left-hand side of the page is actually the item page inside of StageStock. It's got your key information, your item name, the description. It's got your visibility. As you can see, you can kind of scroll through the image files on that. And it's got a very extensive description tag system. So you can put specific tags that you can narrow down and search for, or you can actually be as extensive as you want in the typed description, which is the area just to the left of the photos. Hopefully we can get to showing you the web page so that you can actually see that in a little more detail. But this is one of those glasses in the boxes. So what we saw in the beginning were all of the glasses on the shelves. Now we've moved to a system where it's very tightly put on the shelves, and we actually printed off a report of what's in that location and stuck it to each box. So you have a thumbnail and a QR code for the item, so you could scan it and make sure that's the right item, and you can actually just check it out from there. So that was a really successful way for us to be able to move forward in that. As I'd mentioned, the system does create QR codes for you automatically, and so it's just a direct link to the URL, so to that item's page. Sam had mentioned about permissions and being able to gate people and what they can do and what they're able to see. The system itself actually is very robust. There are 4 permission levels. There's a viewer, contributor, manager, and administrator. And each of those have different levels of what they can do and their actions that they can take. Only people that have a user account to your site can log in and access the information. So if I was to scan one of these codes that I found somewhere, I wouldn't be able to get into the site to access that information unless I had permission. And then also it's based on categories. So a costume person wouldn't be able to get in and manipulate props within your organization. So it's a pretty detailed thing, and it's an entirely another whole session that we could get into just on permissions. And we additionally have the ability for your organization to create your own specialty permissions, which we do at my organization, and a number of our top tier customers actually do that just because of the volume that they're dealing, and they just want to make sure that they're gating well. The next slide. Sam, next slide. Okay, so what we're going to look here is just a few images of some stuff that we're doing. Again, I really wanted to focus today on the best practices that we're finding and how to organize it, right, as a physical thing. The inventory software is very, very robust, but what is the real challenge is how do you utilize that information, right? We see at the top, we're in the process of reorganizing our weapons armory. This is a sword system that we've actually put in, and we're being very specific. Sam had mentioned, is it just by the room? Is it just by the shelf unit? Is it by the slot? And so with this, we're actually, and I'm looking forward to finishing this, there will be 2 locations of the swords inside of a room, and each one of these bars is a row, and then each one of the swords has a slot. And what we found over the years is being really specific is helpful, because then I know that I pulled it and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I want. I take it and put it in the show, and I don't return it, or I return it, the 6 weeks later, and I can't remember exactly where it went. So if I'm very specific in that, I know that it goes right back into that same slot, and I don't have to alter the inventory to account for the new location. Another thing we do is we found that smaller items get lost in boxes or on shelves. So we've got a lot of plastic totes that we put stuff into. We tag them individually. And if they're in groups of items, we put them in Ziploc bags or individually in a single bag and put them inside of that location. So we're really super specific. In this instance, we don't get down to the point where we're numbering the bags, because we have we keep a fewer number of items in that location. The bin is where the level is. So it's the room, the shelving unit, the shelf, the bin. Hope that makes sense. As we had mentioned about the labels, what we have found works really well are these wired on manila labels. And the tag that you're actually seeing is printed straight out of the StageStock system. It's a little bit longer, and we found that this size label worked really well for us. And if you look on the left side, you see the information about how, the item name, the item number, the category it's in. And then if you flip the label over, you've got the QR code. So you can just scan it, check it out, make your edits, any of those things that you're needing to do.
Hey, Jason, while you're talking about labels, we get the question very frequently about, hey, I've already got barcodes on my stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you do if you have a costume inventory that has barcodes or items that have other kinds of barcodes?
We love that answer. Well, we love that question because we have an awesome answer for it. By default, the system, when you create the category, it's going to set it up for a QR code, because we've got a really good method of printing those labels for you. But quickly after we launched with that, we added the ability to change your labeling system. And you can switch over to a code 39, which is that 1D barcode that everybody's used to seeing on all the items you purchase. And that item, you can scan that barcode on the existing item into the ID slot on when you're building your item or editing your item, and that becomes the barcode. And I'll show you a couple of examples of what you can also do if you don't already have that system in place. We have one of the universities we uploaded about 15,000 items that they had pre-barcoded.
Yeah,
Sam, because they had a spreadsheet system, I believe, that had all of that information. And we're actually, if you've got a larger quantity of something that's already in a CSV or in a spreadsheet, we can work with you to move that information over into our system so that you don't have to do it individually. They've been going by department in their organization and uploading pretty large chunks. So that's been really successful. And let's look at another system here. Okay, so this is one of our Knick-Knack Awards shelving units, and as you can see here, on the right-hand side is just a little bit more detailed shot of this. What we decided was we were going to say, okay, this is Unit 12. This is this is shelving unit. Wait, this is shelving unit 12. This is going down from the top, shelf A, B, C, D, E, and then across we go. This is row 1, 2, 3, so that we know that we're stacking stuff in there. It doesn't matter the order, front to back. It just I know that I need to get, when I'm checking out that trophy, that's where it is, and that's where I'm going to put it back, so that when the next person looks for it, they'll be able to find it. We had these grand ideas of printing all these fancy labels out and putting them everywhere, and we realized that we were never getting there. And back to what Sam was saying about location, the workflow gets jammed up really quickly if you don't have an established location system for you. So what we decided is this kind of our indication. All of our shelves are named by the unit, and then going down A through whatever it is going down, and then we delineate across. Typically we use like 3 sections going across a shelf unit, but in this case we have a lot more detail, so we thought we would be a little more specific in this. So what we started doing is just getting gaff tape and Sharpies and putting it on. It's a much more effective way. And again, doing this, going through in the beginning, well, my counterpart, our technical director, and I, and our prop shop manager have been working on going through all of our props inventory spaces and labeling everything. Not as we're going through, but went back to that other idea of as you go inventory, so that if someone besides one of us goes to the facility and pulls something off the shelf, they can say, oh, this came from this room, shelf 11, B2. And they just, what we do is we get painter's tape and it gets stuck to the item as it comes in, so that they can actually, when the person's inventorying it, they can stick that label on there for the location and take the photo. It speeds things up, and we just know, that way we know where to put it back when we're finished. And we'll take a look at the next one, Sam. This is a little bit more, this barcode idea. It's actually a combination of 3 different methods of being able to search for an ID. So in one of our storage facilities for some of our lighting and sound equipment, we use these black and yellow totes a lot to put gear in. You don't know what's in it. So we actually went ahead and inventoried those crates and cases, so that you actually have a code on the outside of it that tells you what that, and the location, specifically that tote, is how you inventory the location of the cables. So you've got some items down below. If I scanned that item, it would pull up and it would tell me what the tote is and where it lives. It lives in that room, spot 2 on the top. And it's just kind of, what we found is really helpful is to label the crates, because we know they come out of that room all the time. There's a crate that tells us where to put it back on the shelf, and then all of the stuff inside of the items are all inventoried. So with our electricals and our sound and lighting equipment, we typically use the barcodes, and you see that on that bottom right, on the bottom left, and we have a little handheld label maker that does code 39. So we just print them out and we put them on there. And that the ID, actually, this is a great thing to know, is the ID system for us. You can let the system automatically generate an ID number, or you can custom add that. In this case, we wanted to put an organizational prefix on it so that we knew what it was. And there's part in there that also lets me know what department it is, and then the number. And so the barcode actually is all of that information inside of it. So we found that to be pretty helpful. And then additionally, sometimes you've got other smaller items that, like cables, that you really want to make sure you're keeping track of the inventory purpose. And for me, it's more about the maintenance and the value on it. And we do, like, this is a quantity. It's one item and it's a quantity of 22, but they're all under that same ID number. And instead of trying to put a barcode on it, we actually that same label maker has wire and cable labels. And so we just use the ID number. So if I needed to find it really quickly, I could just go to my app and I could type the ID number in and it'll pull it up for me right there. So it's got a little bit of flex in that. We currently aren't inventorying our costumes. We're not into that area, but there are iron-on, high temperature or high temp resistant longevity iron-in barcodes that you can get, and that's like at the dry cleaner and uniform shops and costume shops also use that a lot. And we found one of our vendors, or one of our customers, has a vendor that they like really well, and we can post that information up for you later as well. And then just some of the tips, just to go back and kind of look at, try to complete things in small chunks at a time. I'll tell you that we've had a time of it sometimes with going back and like, what was this item? I can't remember where this was. Where is it in the room? Where's that box? Just kind of, if you're doing blocks, really try to get that stuff into the room, processed, and out of the room. You want to go ahead and go all the way through it and learn as you go. I will say that constantly, we learn every day. We have a lot of discussions about the process, and it's just as important to know the specifics of the location as how you're going to build your description tags and how you're going to be able to search your inventory for that. The next one. And so what we found that is really helpful for us is we've created a wiki, right? Or a how-to best practices. This is just an example of one that we built. StageStock, our inventory system, also has a companion software, and I'll give a small plug, which is Virtual Callboard. And it's a collaborative system more about people and projects, not the items. And so we use the discussion board feature in there to really keep track of these conversations as we're going, because we don't decide things definitively sometimes, and it's just kind of an evolution. So we create this, and this is talking about the process of how we're going to label stuff and create a reservation. So this, once we flesh it out, this is the how-to manual for the people that are managing that inventory. And as we look at the next one, this is a more specific area, and this is a tag discussion for props, and it's looking at, okay, so we want to know if something's weight bearing. Is it approved for combat, or is it a non-standard practices? Like, we have a dance program, and the choreographers and dancers love to use furniture, and we really are excited about that. But we're starting to tag items so that if we know it needs to do something like that, we can filter down in the inventory search to find things that are approved for that. So kind of looking at the big picture, big question. I think at this point, we'd love for people to ask some specific questions of us, and we can kind of get into some more details about StageStock at this point. So
we'll send the call out to the ether. If you're out there and watching and you have questions about what we talked about, if you have questions about StageStock in general, type those into the comments of wherever you're watching us from, and we'll see those come back into our screen, and we can respond to those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're waiting to see if there's any questions, Sam and Jason, thank you for joining us today. I think it was a valuable experience, and you're our guinea pigs. And forgive me on my producing quality today. I've always worked backstage, and I got to have fun with some banners, and I hope you didn't mind me switching up from.
No, I really enjoyed that. I was like, oh, that looks good.
Yeah. So I've created a banner for the end when I'm wrapping it up or whatever. But in fact, well, let's scroll your banner again, shall we? So everybody knows you're theemptyspace.com and where to find you guys. I think we should just chit chat for another couple of seconds in case anybody has questions. There's still 17 or 18 folks watching us. I will watch for those. But if you don't mind, I'm actually going to try to share my screen, and I'll watch for, let's see. I haven't actually shared my screen before. So you know what? I'm not going to bother trying to do that right now.
Well, we can dive into a few more details about StageStock itself, just some frequently asked questions we get from people, if that's all right.
I think you should. Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So just to give a short history of like where StageStock came from. So we launched it in 2015 as a beta service. It is subscription because it is cloud hosted. It's multiplayer. So a lot of those questions I was talking about at the beginning, where do all these come from? So it is cloud hosted and it's role based. You get as many users as you want. What you actually pay for is as many items as you inventory in the system.
Actually, Sam,
yeah.
Can I jump in and just answer Jason's question and share this really quickly, just because it is a specific question about the system. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start pulling up the site. Okay. And I've got, this is our demo site. So anybody can log into this. It's demo.vcallboard.com or demo.stagestock.com. As I'd mentioned, Virtual Callboard and StageStock are companion pieces. You can subscribe to one or the other or all of them. Both, so we can do this. I'm just going to pop over. I'm on the inventory search checkout page, which is going to give me everything here I can see is a card file, because again, I think as a designer, I like to see things visually. I'm trying to recreate walking down the row, but we also have the ability to see it in the list form. Oh, I just kicked out. Give me 1 second. Hopefully it'll carry me right back over there. And then I will show you how to create that pull list. And so now I'm actually seeing that inventory in a list view, which I can control what items I'm seeing in this table, so I can get really super specific. And that back in the back with the label that I had on the outside of those boxes was from this view, and we were able to filter down. But I'm going to pop over to the Reservations tab and show you what that looks like. So there are 4 different buckets for reservations. There are things that are going today out the door, things that are coming up that are tomorrow and beyond, past due, which is Sam didn't come pick this up yesterday, but he's coming today. It's in the past due pile. And then we have the expired items. And the expired items are the things that they were never picked up. You can delete those reservations, but we track it because sometimes you might have someone like Pat, the producer here, that has a tendency not to pick up their items that they made a reservation. And for me, at my organization, I'm trying to keep the things off of the shelf and onto the stages. So if someone reserved it, someone else couldn't reserve it. And so I just want to keep track of that and be mindful of it. And then if something changed, I can actually go in and adjust that. But I'm going to pop over here to the past due section. And these are all the reservations that are past due. This set build is one of them. So I click on that and there's nothing in it because this is the demo. And
a reservation can be a bundle of items too.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, let me find one here.
So you can say like, I need these 10 items and we batch it into a reservation and then it's reserved from one time to another time, which is super helpful because then as other people go and peruse the system and say, hey, I'm looking for this item too, they can see those reservations right on the item and see, oh, this is already reserved for our upcoming production. So I'm not going to be able to have it during that time period. So we're living in sort of the present, the future, right, which is coming, and we also catalog a lot in the system about the past, like what happened with the system, what's its history, or sorry, what happened with the item, what's the history of the item, and where has it been.
Right, and so what I'm going to do here is actually I'm going to show you how quick it is to create a reservation, and then we'll look at that pull list. It'll just make that easier. I went through here and I found 4 items that I wanted, and oh, there's not a reservation available, so I'm going to build one really fast. And it's going to be, I need it by tomorrow, and I'm going to have it until July. It's going out to Dawn, and it's going to the Princess Who. And I could put notes here if I wanted. And I'm going to create that, and now that's in here. The system, if any of these items had a reservation already or they were already checked out that conflicted with this reservation, they would have a quantity pop up of 0. And so that's a really nice feature here. And so I can hover over this and see what all the details are for that reservation. But I'm going to just go ahead and save that reservation.
Quick question here. Do we need a barcode scanner to use StageStock?
No. We actually developed the native app for iOS and Android, and it has a built-in scanner. And it knows if you're scanning a barcode or if you're scanning the QR code, and it'll find the item based on that. And you can use, if you do have a scanner, you can plug that into your computer and do it from there as well.
Yeah, Sarah's asking about other types of coding systems. So we highlighted this a little bit earlier, but you don't have to use the QR code. You can type in your custom ID into the system. So if you already have a barcoding system, or if you're using like Jason mentioned with his audio equipment or lighting equipment, he had like a different alphanumeric system he was using. That can be flexibly entered into the system and managed separately. And
it's actually not, you can each category, each item can have a different coding system. The IDs are not tied to a category or to anything. So you could have an alphanumeric item ID next to something that's just straight numeric. And then here, as you see, I pulled this up. So we have now what the reservation is. As with most of our table views in StageStock, we can actually control what we're looking at. What we found that we think helps a lot for us is we navigate through here and figure out exactly what we want to pull, like what we're going to pull and what we're going to return. We typically, when we're doing that, we don't have the quantity available. We don't care about that. We just need to know what the quantity we're pulling is and its location. So we print this out so that we can carry it around and work with it in case we lose reception, Wi-Fi reception. And we just will put a little tick box on it as we get back to the shop or whatever. And then I say, okay, everything's got a tick on it. And then I click that button and I check it out. And it goes, yep, confirm everything. It's like, oh, Dawn's not actually there anymore. Sandy's now there. So that's good. Oh, and they're going to now need it through the 17th. I can make these adjustments really quickly, and then I can check it out. One thing about the checkout system, you can actually check it out to a production in your organization. You can say I'm checking it out to maintenance or other, and I can do for internal and external contacts. So the external will use vendors. So if I need to send this back to to ETC, I'd be able to say external contacts, put that in there, and then I check it out so I know where it is. And so I'm going to check that out. And so now it's done. So it gives me a really fast thing. And I just want to pull over just in 1 minute and show you. This is a list of all the items that are checked out. It's color coded. It turns everything red if it's overdue and it should have been back in already. So I can come in and I can say, I'm looking for Sandy. So it's checked out to Sandy. Oh. And now I can see, oh, these are the items. When I check it back in, I can go, okay, these are the items that I've got on my list. I can visually confirm it, and then I can check it back in.
And Jason, question on editing items. So maybe you can just click into one of those items.
I can do that.
Maybe I need to make an edit to an item. How would I do that?
Yeah. I made a note for me to go back and look at this with everyone because of that comment earlier about items being altered. Oh, it's because I'm...
Yeah, reset your...
yeah, I have to reset my filters. View. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back to card view because I like to work in that one. Okay, so I'm going to click on this downtown metal bench. As I look at it, this is an example of sort of the descriptions. We had mentioned this earlier. I can be super specific or I could have absolutely no details in it because I'm like, I just need the visual images. So when I edit this item, I click edit. And this is what the screen looks like when you're creating the item as well. Inside the description field, one of the choices that we made with creating this product was not to be super specific and say that these are the fields that you need. You need a height field, you need a depth field, you need a width field. And that you had a page of information that was empty if you didn't want to put that in. So what we did is we put a description field in there that you can put any kind of information you want in there and you can search it. When you do a basic search, it looks at the item's name, anything in the description field, and any of the description tags. And then from there, you can drill down and get really super specific. So you can actually add a table like this and create a template that always asks you for this type of item to have that. But what I do is if we alter an item, if it was painted black before and that was in its description, I actually put a strike through on the old information and highlight the new information and put the date on it. Because as a designer and a collaborator at an organization for over a decade or more, we talk in terms of, remember that blue throne, the one with the jewels on it that was used in that Shakespeare show? That's why we built StageStock. So I'm going to search for the blue throne, but if it's now yellow, I will never find it based on that. So that's why we as a best practice put alterations in the system that way. Additionally,
you get that little history panel too there. So
yeah, oh yeah.
If you check something out to maintenance or check it back out to the shop, you always get the check-in comments as well. So if you can say in the check-in comment, hey, we painted this blue, it used to be purple. You can see that history of the item as it changed over time. Yeah,
and so it's a really pretty, it's a very flexible, very powerful tool. Up here, you see you add images, really simple. You can, if you've made an alteration, throw that new photo on there. I had mentioned earlier that when we're doing bulk, we usually do things with the digital camera. The system, the app, as well as from the web browser mobilely, you can take photos with your camera and load them instantaneously. instantaneously. So when we're doing edits or we're doing stuff on the fly, we add it. We hit add an image. It says take a photo, load it, done. It's really fast, but I can also choose, or I can actually drag and drop images over here. If I've got those on that SD card, it's fast for me to drag the 5 images and just drop them in there, and it just loads them. And then I get to pick what the cover image is going to be. And then the last thing about how we store files on here. So as I'd mentioned, no limits on files for images. We don't limit the non-image files as well. So you can load things like, hey, this is the owner's manual. This is the instructions for costumes. This is the care documentation for this very special item, so that it has it right there. When I'm underneath the turntable and I'm looking at the motor and I'm trying to figure out what the wiring scheme is supposed to be, I can actually scan the barcode with my app, click on the wiring diagram and see it. I don't have to go find that anywhere somewhere else. It's just tied to my item. So we've really thought through a lot of that process for you. And then down here, we'd mentioned the locations. I just want to show you that. I know we're at time, but actually I'm not going to do it from here. I'm going to do it. There's another spot that's going to show you a little bit more intently on how detailed the search can be. So if I go to that advanced search, I've got all of these different places and locations. I can search by description tags, and it's actually going to show me all the tags that are in there. And then I can say, oh, I'm looking for color. And I do it this way at my site, just so that I know all the colors are going to be right there. But locations, so we're looking at this one room. We've got this cabinet, we've got a shelf. So we're able to tier down really super specifically with all of these locations. So room 49, then shelf. And as we look through that, I know we hit on just a few of these items in the system, but again, we wanted to make sure we were talking about the process because it's really important to us. We encourage people to reach out to us and set up a time that we can actually walk through and all those questions Sam started with. We'd like to have a conversation with you about what those goals are and really help tailor what we're looking at and how we're showing you the system works based on those needs.
Yeah, and just to touch on the last question here on the screen, if this is on cloud, can it be saved locally or worked offline? So right now we only support online access or online work via either the mobile app or the website. Don't get a ton of user input for offline access, but hey, if that's important to you, let us know. Maybe we can throw up on the screen here just the couple of ways you can contact us. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. You can just email us directly at support@theemptyspace.com. Set up a time with us. We are happy to, like Jason said, chat with you about your inventory project and really evaluate. We hope that you'll consider us to evaluate as a digital tool to use to help you do this inventory project you might have. So, oh, and here a question from Nathan: can you just print QR codes? So yes, you can print the QR codes out. We do support a couple different Avery label styles, I think, to print them out.
On that, Sam, we do support that, but what I've found that from printer to printer, the margin settings get a little wonky. So what I found that works best is I get the full 8.5 by 11 sticker label page printed on that, and I've got a little roto trimmer and a pair of scissors, and I cut it really quickly. Yeah. It's not a difficult task at all to do. And we do, it just depends on what the item is. If it's something like a piece of stock scenery, we can stick that label to the back of the flat because no one's going to see that. A lot of the props and items, we put them on removable tags just so that they're not showing during performance.
Awesome. Great. Any other questions, Christine, or did we do it?
I think we did it. You get a couple of kudos here, thank yous and awesomes, and
Awesome.
I want to thank all our folks for writing in and adding some questions there. Just so you know, so you should keep in touch, audience, with us for the rest of the summer. Wow, I'm getting text messages. I must be popular. Sorry about that. Keep in touch. Hopefully every Friday we'll be supporting one of these. We have a bunch of stuff to show you lined up for June. And if you don't mind, gentlemen, I'm just going to take a quick second. Hold on, we have another thank you from our audience. Folks, if you stick with us for the rest of June, you'll see here on the screen that we have some other conversations. If you haven't been to any of the No More 10 out of 12's Impact on the Disability Community conversation is next Wednesday. Our Management Commission is meeting for their summer meeting. They'll talk management in general, but they'll probably start talking about next year's conference. We're in Baltimore next year, March 2nd through 8th. We also have a Lift the Curtain, Breaking the Business of Unpaid Internships. And then next Friday, we also have another theater inventory management system. So join us. Next week is action-packed. Again, on the ticker, go to usitt.org and look for all the events we have coming up in the future. Gentlemen, else, I think we'll call it this done for the day, and quite the success. Again, thanks for being our guinea pigs and our first ones, Sam and Jason from theemptyspace.com. Any last words, or we're just going to sign off for today?
Oh, thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much. And I mentioned about some of the source stuff. Once you guys post this up on Facebook, I'll try to get in there and put a comment on there for some of those links.
Bunch of links.
Yeah.
Excellent, gentlemen. Thank you. Thanks for sharing today. Thanks for being with us. We'll see the whole audience again next week for our other webinars. Take care. Have a good weekend, everybody.